Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Hope everyone's had a good day today. What have you done with your time? Big up to all of you. This is going to be a very interesting space. I've been looking forward to this since I've got it organised. It's going to be a good space. I've obviously got Dave Atherton coming on, who is what I would consider, far right, and I've got Zeeshan coming on. We had Zeeshan on last week. We had a good space with Zeeshan last week. As you know, guys, most of you'll be aware of David. I don't agree with his opinions. That's to say the least. However, at least he's got the balls to come on and have a debate, which is more than I can say for 99% of people on this platform who I offer debates and conversations with on a daily basis, and they've got plenty of abuse on timeline. But when I put it on them, more often than not, they chicken out, they run away, they come up with some nonsense excuse, and just to stay out of the debate. So at least David's got the balls to come on and have a conversation. So I do respect you for that, David. How are you doing today, David?
Thank you. You're very kind, Johnny.
How are you doing? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm always good. So a bit tired, but living out of Twitter is hard work. I tell you.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like a second job, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's my full-time job.
All right, fair enough. I didn't know that. Well, big up to you, man.
I make a few quid from journalism, but that's not enough. No, but I pay the rent and pay the bills on it, sort of thing.
No problem, man. Good evening, Zeeshan. How are we doing?
Yeah, good evening, Johnny. I'm doing good. How are you, bro?
I'm good, man. I've been looking forward to this one. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this very much. So, I'm going to try take much more of a moderator's approach tonight. I'll still get involved, but probably less so than usual, David, because I'm very interested to hear the conversation between yourself and Zeeshan. Zeeshan, I don't know if are you aware of Zeeshan?
Frankly, no. Other than being a YouTuber, not really to be perfectly honest.
So Zeeshan he runs this channel called Smile2Jannah, and there's a place called Speaker's Corner where people come along and they whether they're Christian or Jewish or atheist or whatever religious affiliation they have, and they come to Speaker's Corner. There's some prominent speakers down there. Zeeshan's one of them, and they have debates, very interesting, fascinating debates. And I watched a lot of Zeeshan's work, and I think he's one of the perfect candidates to be having this conversation tonight. So that's Zeeshan. Zeeshan, I'll sort of let you introduce yourself to Dave rather than speaking for you.
No, I think that's good enough, bro. I think that's good enough.
No problem. Guys, hopefully this will be a good conversation. As I said, I'm going to be limiting the speakers for reasons that I've just set out because I want the flow of the conversation to remain intact. And so, David, just to sort of refresh some people's minds that may not be familiar with you, can you explain to people because obviously the title of space is Islam, Palestine, Israel. So we're going to start off with Islam and we'll sort of transition into Palestine, Israel naturally. What is your So for anybody that looks at David's page, and this is my opinion, I don't mean this to sound inflammatory, David, but to anybody that would be of Muslim origin, be a Muslim themselves, right? To anybody that would look at your page, I would imagine they would think it's extremely Islamophobic, right? That's just my opinion. But what is your position on Islam, and how did you arrive at that position?
Okay. If you look back at actually, Johnny, that's a fantastic question. I want to say, well done, mate. That really is a good question. Okay. Let's kick off with some stats. Since 2000, there have been 100 terrorist murders in Britain. 97 were committed by Islamists. And the other thing is, when I debate matters on X, for example, it's very, very rare to get a qualified, civilized reply or comment from people who are coming from the Islamic side. It's mostly cheap abuse. I've also had numerous death threats, and also the most worrying one was a private detective got in touch with me and said that an Islamist was trying to get hold of my home address. So I'm sorry, I'm just a bloke with a view. I just see myself as a bloke with an X account. putting things forward. There is a noted academic who also happens to be Islamic, and he sent me a bit of a shitty DM a few months ago. He said, when I speak to you, you're always moderate, but when you're on Twitter, you're always a little bit on the strong side, and it's simply because I get so much abuse and I get so much grief, for just pointing out often basic facts. 90% of people on MI5's terrorist list are Islamists. 75% of cases they investigate with the counter-terrorism police, 75% are Islamist. And just pointing this out gets me cheap abuse, and I know it really does annoy me. And also, you frame me as an Islamophobe. You frame me as Islam, right? Look, what is the difference between? Where is the line between Islamophobia and legitimate criticism of a secular and religious ideology? I've asked that dozens and dozens of times from the left, from Muslims, from imams and clerics. Where is the line between Islamophobia, Islamophobia and legitimate criticism of an ideology? There you go. That's the kind of thing that really annoys me. You get all these thumbs down for just simply asking a question. Then you wonder why I write the tweets that I write. Is there anybody out there who wants to put their hand up and tell me where the line is between Islamophobia?
Okay, so let me come in there. So first of all, don't let emojis trigger you, right? Because people, this is a debate, right? And when you're not going to please everyone and you're not going to piss everyone off, like there's people, that's their way of showing their opinion, right? Whether they agree with you or disagree with you. So don't let people trigger you. Honestly, if I used to it still gets to me sometimes, but just try to ignore the audience. I don't again, not sounding derogatory towards the audience because there's no space without the audience, right? But just don't let emojis trigger you, right? So when I look at your timeline, right, I don't see no criticism of Jews. I don't see no criticism of Christians. I don't see no criticism of atheists, of Sikhs, of Hindus. I don't see any of that. All I see is a tidal wave, a tsunami of criticism against Muslims. I don't see anything else. So, one second, because I didn't interrupt you, right? So, one second. So, one could say, when I look at your timeline, the fact that it's very prevalent that you've got a very bias towards Muslims, right? But there's no criticism for anybody else. There's nothing. So one would say, and again, I'm saying this from a reasonable standpoint, when I look at your timeline, when I see extreme amounts of criticism for Muslims and Islam, and I don't see any for anybody else, that would suggest to people that you've got a big problem with Islam and Muslims. Do you understand that?
Oh, shit.
Hello? Is there? David?
Yeah, Johnny, shall I jump in here?
Yeah, please do, Zeeshan.
Yeah, David, thanks for coming today.
Hopefully he'll come back. I don't know what's happened. Maybe
David, are you there?
dead. I think his battery's gone.
Oh,
It just suddenly went. Hopefully he'll come back because, we kind of need him back. kind of need him back.
yeah, it's difficult doing this without him, you see.
I know he'll come back. I know he'll come back.
All right, then Johnny, you might as well take the floor till he comes back. Otherwise, I'm just preaching to the choir, isn't it?
No problem. Listen, there's nothing wrong with being critical of anyone's religion or any person, any entity. There's no problem with criticism. Criticism is healthy, right? When you can't be critical, like for example now in the United States, his back is David. I know you don't want to listen to me pumping my gums. I'll let Zeeshan just take over. Are you back, David?
Yeah, sorry, my PC crashed.
Oh.
It's 7 years old. It's no
problem.
It gets used 24/7.
It's fine. But yeah. I'm glad you're back. So, did you hear what I just said then, David?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, but
so I'm going to pass the mic over to Zeeshan and I'm going to try and step out of this and let Zeeshan and you carry on. Go on, Zeeshan.
Yeah, thanks for coming today, David. Thanks for
pleasure.
Taking your time out for this conversation. Like you said, it is definitely very important to have civilized conversations in which we do put facts forward and at the forefront. And are open to being wrong. And people that, of course, don't do that and do resort to threatening with violence and abuse, I don't think it's helpful. I, like yourself, am recipient to a lot of hate and death threats as well, but I don't use it to generalize certain religious groups or certain figures. I try to stay as balanced and as factual as possible, which I invite you to do the same as well, because you do have a significant platform, as do I, and with great power does come great responsibility. So we do need to ensure that we don't let our personal biases get in front of the facts. Of course, we're human beings and sometimes it does happen, but hopefully conversations like this will help our viewers see both sides and make their own informed judgments.
Can I just ask you a couple of basic questions?
Yeah, sure.
Are you British national or
I'm born in this country, yes.
Oh, okay, fine. Are you Muslim?
I am indeed.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, and can I ask you which part of Britain you were brought up in?
Yeah, South London.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Which bit of South London?
What about yourself?
Oh, I come from Ascot in Berkshire, but I lived in East London for 30 years. So
actually, East. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It all makes sense now.
It's so rough. Even the muggers go around in pairs.
Oh my gosh. What about yourself, David? What religion are you affiliated with?
I'm not overly religious. Three of my grandparents are Christian. One of my grandparents is Jewish. So that's on my mother's side. So I'm still technically viewed to be a Jew by other people. And I probably, as I say, I'm not overly religious, but I probably could see myself from the Judeo-Christian history or background sort of thing. Judeo-Christian is how
So
I
the Judeo side or the Christian side, because they're both
equal, because obviously there are theological differences on things like this.
Very, very big differences, no?
Yeah, but you say I'm not overly religious. The fact that Jews and Muslims don't believe Jesus died on the cross. I don't wake up while Christians obviously do believe Jesus died on the cross, ascended into heaven. I don't wake up at night, in cold sweats, wondering who might be right.
But the issue with that, David, is that certain Jews do believe that it says in the Talmud that Jesus is burning in hot oil and in his feces. So as you can see, certain Christians will have big problems with that and do have big problems with that.
Sorry, surely you mean that Muslims and Jews believe that Jesus is boiling in hot oil and things like that?
No, not Muslims. We believe that he's been raised and shall return again, and we will follow him. And Muslims, Christians, Jews will come together. In fact, it is blasphemous for us to insult Jesus. That's why you'll hear Muslims say, Jesus, peace be upon him. In fact, we even name our children Isa and Maryam, which is Arabic for Jesus and Mary.
Yeah, I think it's Maryam as well. I think he uses.
Yeah. Maryam is in the Greek. If you look in the New Testament, the Greek, you'll see where it says Mary in Gospel of Mark, it says Maryam.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But the point I'm saying, Zeeshan, is these aren't the issues that keep me awake at night. I believe there is a God, but all the secular politics that goes on behind the scenes, I really am not particularly interested in.
So out of interest, David, when people do talk about Jesus and the birth of Jesus, do you celebrate the birth of Jesus? Do you revere Jesus? Do you go to church, or do you go to the synagogue and claim that of Jesus was just a mere man who lied and who was crucified for his lies?
I suppose I'm nearly bordering on atheism here. Did he lie? I don't. The message I take away from no, I don't go to church. I should go to church, but I never quite get around to it. Often because there's nobody else I can go to church with. I wanted to go to my local church, which is just around the corner.
You could just go by yourself, David, if you truly believe in that faith. No,
I'm sure I could, but sure I could, but I don't. That's the bottom line, sort of thing. But no, sorry. Did I ask you a question, or do you want some more information?
Yeah, you did. So, I think you started the kind of response by saying Judeo-Christian. Then I think you were leaning more on the Christian side. However, now you're leaning more on the atheist side. Am I
Well,
correct to assume you're an atheist?
no, I'm not an atheist because there is a God, but I know.
Agnostic?
Well, no, there is a God, but I just don't have any time for all the secular intricacies that the people fight and row about in the world. In the meantime, what's the other thing? Yes. Jesus is the Son of God. Christians believe Jesus is the Son of God, while Jews and Muslims just think he's a prophet. Again, these things don't keep me awake at night.
Okay, would you say that you get your morality from the Old Testament, the New Testament, or liberal values? Because for this
Uh,
conversation, I think that it would be a good indicator of a baseline to kind of have a back and forth with.
Oh, okay, fine. Certainly, as a free speech fundamentalist, I probably am a devotee of the English Enlightenment for the late 17th century. People like Locke, and moving forward, people like John Stuart Mill, the
Hmm.
Liberal MP. That's probably where I get probably the majority of it from. The takeout I have from Christianity for Christianity is about turning the other cheek, loving thy neighbour, and forgiveness. And my takeout from Islam is whoever saves one life saves the world. Whoever kills one person kills the whole of humanity. Excuse it if I butchered that. No, that's my.
No, but that's about right. Yeah.
I take the positives out of all religions and all philosophies.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, that's a good start. Would you say you're a utilitarian because you mentioned John Stuart Mill?
Yeah, probably. I don't know exactly what you mean by utilitarian, but could you, excuse my ignorance, explain to me what utilitarian is? Sorry.
Oh, it's because you mentioned John Stuart Mill, and John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham are proponents of utilitarianism, which is the greater good for the greater number, i.e., you don't necessarily believe in good and bad, but you believe that if harm outweighs pleasure, then it's bad. If pleasure outweighs harm, then it's good. Sound about right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm broadly with that. It's something I need to read into and work out the implications. It's
Okay.
something I don't know about, and you obviously are far superior on the matter than me.
Okay, no problem. Sounds good. I think that's good for us to just kind
Yeah,
of
this is the
get to
point.
know
He
each
said, I speak to somebody who's reasonable and moderate and learned, and I'm suddenly a
Just,
decent
just, just want
guy.
to, just want to come in there, right, David? Yeah, just like just as a neutral observer, right? If you were more balanced in those things that you're putting out, people would be more balanced with the way they conduct themselves when they're speaking to you. So, and as I said already, when I look at your timeline, if I was a Muslim, I would be I'm not. In fact, you know what? I'm not Muslim, and I'm deeply offended. So, God knows what Muslims must feel when they look at your timeline, because I get abused 24/7, right? Of people that look like me, white British Caucasian males, right? I get so much abuse. I've had death threats. I've been doxxed. I get abused 24/7 off my own people, right? But I don't. But because I get abused 24/7, I don't start talking shit about Christians or
Yeah,
Christianity or start
yeah,
abusing white people. Do you get what I'm saying? So
yeah,
that
sure.
is, with all due respect to you, that is not an excuse to say because I get abuse of XYZ, I'm going to put XYZ out and put out a completely unbalanced portrayal of Muslims in Islam. If you was more balanced and fair and reasonable, people that approach you would be more fair and balanced in their approach. It's quite
Yeah.
simple.
Okay. Well, the other side of the coin, though, is do you know Zara, my Muslim lady troll?
Excuse me?
Zara, my Muslim lady troll.
No, I don't know Zara. I don't
Oh,
know
okay.
Zara.
Yeah, everybody's got a comment. She said, she's posted photographs of LGBT pride parades where there are adults dressed as dogs, being on leads. There's a kind of sadomasochistic display in front of kids. And she said, and she said, "No, this is your Western well for you, Dave." There was also in 2019 the Anderson Park Primary School in Birmingham. where they were doing there were LGBT lessons. There'll be LGBT lessons for children of primary school age, 5 to 11 years of age, and the Muslim guys were protesting it. I agree with
But to
Zara.
be fair, but I'd protest that too.
Yeah. No, this is the whole point. I agree with those guys, Johnny. I agree with the Muslims who were doing that. They should not be LGBT. One of my stories this evening, my penultimate one that I sent out was story of Reverend Dr. Bernard Randall, who was a chaplain to a Church of England school, and he was sacked for not chanting "Smash heteronormativity." Heteronormativity. Excuse me, I butchered that, and he's appealed it. The way that when it comes to homosexuality, what two adults in private get up to within reason is not my business. But I do not want this rammed down children's throats. And every parent should have the right to take their child out of lessons like this, which
No,
I'm sure
I agree.
the vast majority of
But,
Muslims will agree with me on.
just to go back on a point, yeah,
Johnny, if I can just because I think
go on.
before we lost David, I think he made a few points.
Okay,
that
yeah,
I
go
think
on.
it's important to kind of just mention those, because he did posit some valuable questions that I think do need addressing. But David, before I get into it, just to know your stance from of course what you've posted and the knowledge that you have, who, according to your knowledge, what was the religion of the Southport attacker?
Oh, he's Muslim.
Okay.
It was a Muslim convert.
Right. And the attacker yesterday in Mannheim, Germany?
By all reports, he appears to be a native white Caucasian German.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I'll just
by the way, that the tweet I said where he was a 24-year-old Afghan, I've deleted.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so just using both of these posts of yours as a kind of jumping off point, the Southport killer was by, I think, unanimous, whether it's the statements by the police during that. In fact, 7 days ago from now, the BBC put out an article saying the police knew that Axel Ruda Cabana was not, and I repeat, not a Muslim. And there was no difference of opinion about this. However, in the Mirror, the Telegraph, and I would say pretty much all of the newspapers, they said that he was born in Cardiff. He had a Rwandan background. His parents were devout Catholics, and he was, according to the Daily Mirror, a quiet choir boy, in quotes. So, according to his neighbors, according to what was said in the media, according to the police, he was by all means not a Muslim. However, a few lies, people like Andrew Tate, Tommy Robinson, and the likes, they kept forwarding this notion that he was a Muslim when there was not a lick of evidence to claim that he was a Muslim. So that resulted in a lot of angry people going out, smashing homes, venting their frustration that they were pretty much projecting other things rather than what was actually the issue. And then alongside that time, there was another stabbing of a child. This was in Leicester Square. However, there was a security guard that leapt and saved that child from. There was another child, saved them from being further attacked. In fact, he was labeled a hero. Do you know his name?
I don't. I think he's from what used to be known as Yugoslavia.
No, his name is Abdullah. So Abdullah translated is slave of Allah.
Yeah,
which is God. So he was a Muslim. He was hailed as a hero. And in Mannheim, as you clearly said, this has just come out that he was actually he wasn't a Muslim. He was actually a Christian. And there was somebody called Afzal Muhammad. And Afzal Muhammad,
taxi driver.
He was a taxi driver indeed that followed him, stopped him, apprehended him till the police was able to come and stop what was going on.
If you've got a link, can you DM me that, and I'll send that out after the space just to make sure that I have that right. And
Fantastic. So yeah, I'd love to do that. And anytime I mention something that you want me to send it to you, I'll happily do that after our discussion
anything
ends.
positive, send it to me. My DMs are open, and anything positive you want to say about Islam, please do it.
Fantastic. I think, David, the thing is, it's not about being positive about Islam. It's just about, just like I said at the beginning, we'll just stick with the facts. We'll try take the Stoics approach, which is strip away as many emotions as humanly possible, and let's
Sure.
just let the facts speak for themselves and let the people make up their own minds. And if there is something that we've missed, of course, we're human beings. We should be able to put that up. But another question that you asked was, where is the line? Where's the line between
Yeah, sure.
Islamophobia and where is the line between fair critique of Islam? And I will say very simply, the line is accuracy and generalization. That's where the line is. For you to accurately critique Islam, as long as it is accurate and as long as it is not generalized, we're absolutely, it's fine for us to do so. However, when we are generalizing and when we're demonizing, that's, David, the line that should not be crossed, because if that line gets crossed, then we're bordering, well, not bordering, we're on the area of dishonesty, and then it's all hell breaks loose after that. So there's that line.
I've often bemoaned. I've often bemoaned on Twitter. There are not enough moderate Muslim organisations in this country. It's a shame Quilliam folded, and I think the Labour Party is trying to build a moderate Muslim network. No, people like that. For example, like yourself, Zeeshan. I live on the border of Southwest and Southwest London. Hopefully, we can get together for a coffee sometime, because I like to have a private, extended conversation with
Yeah,
my
definitely,
mate.
I'd like that.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. So, I get to most places in London from where I live. I'm very happy with that. But I don't think I generalise that all Muslims are like that. I just, also the other thing that really worries people like myself and other people is where you get all the, where you get those videos of, I generally don't use the word Muslim. I tend to use the word Islamists. Obviously sometimes you can't get away from using the word Muslim. For example, I reported on a brawl with machetes and machetes and knives at the Nur-ul-Ulum Mosque in Somerville Road, Birmingham. Just at the time of Itfar. Actually, I don't use the word Muslim. I just say it seems Ramadan is not agreeing with everybody at the Nur-ul-Ulum Mosque in Somerville Road, Birmingham. A brawl broke out with knives and machetes. It happened at iftar time last night as they broke their fast. 2 were arrested for violent disorder. That's kind of straight reporting. Would you agree, Zeeshan?
The thing is, David, you're asking for, just before we get on that point, you mentioned Quilliam. Quilliam mentioned that 85% of groomers were Muslim Pakistani. They actually purported this lie, which the likes of Ella Cobain, who is foremost when it comes to child sexual group exploitation. She's somebody that is an academic in this field, who, anyone who's talking about this that doesn't mention Ella Cobain, either they're just not really familiar with this field or they're just being dishonest. And when it comes to Ella Cobain, she's taken that report to pieces, and that was something that the tabloids ran with here in the UK, especially earlier on, towards, I think, around 2011 time, when the Times first broke this. So Quilliam has not only forwarded disinformation with no kind of transparency. Their fundings have been very dubious. Their stance on Islam and fundamental orthodox opinions have been refuted. So they don't really speak for the mainstream Muslims. So Quilliam, I don't think would be a very good example. In fact, they're quite the opposite.
Well, okay. Can I come back to you on some of those points?
Course.
Right. Okay. Fine. I presume also when you mentioned in Dr. Cock,
Ala Cobain, yeah.
I'm determined not to say cock brain. Sorry, cock brain. But sorry, it's such a cheap remark, that one, isn't it? But,
yeah. A lot of people that read that, they read it as Cockbane, yeah.
Yeah, that's his name, Cockbane.
Hmm.
Her Twitter account is Dr. LSC. So if you want to know that, and I might not have his name right, but her wingman is it Waka?
Wakas to fail.
Yeah. So yeah, they both have blocked me on Twitter anyway. And by the way, they're either heavily influenced, or they wrote the report that Priti Patel quoted in 2022.
Right. The Home Office one?
Yeah, the Home Office one. Yeah, I've read it. There's no credit to who wrote it, but most of the links in there is the work of her and Wakas, whatever his name is. So
yeah, they weren't the only ones. It was actually a group effort. But before we jump into that, because at the beginning I think you mentioned a few points, so I just wanted to address them before we get back on level playing field here. So the other thing that you mentioned was a statistic. You said from the year 2000 till from 2000 to remind me, what was the other one?
So to the present.
There's
been 100 terrorist murders.
Yes. So you said there's been 100, and majority, like 97 out of the 100, have been done by Islamists. Upon fact checking that, according to Statistica and Europol, that's false. That's incorrect. So I'd love to see where your source is for that as well.
Okay, I shall make a note, and I shall document every single one of them. Let's kick off. 38 people were killed on 7/7, and there were 22 killed at Manchester Arena. There's 60 for you already.
Yeah, but Manchester Arena, I'm sure you know that the father of the perpetrator of the attack was under the watchful eye of the MI5, MI6. He was allowed to go back and forth because he was being utilized as an asset to remove the Gaddafi regime. Were you aware of that?
His son was an ISIS.
Yeah, they were both allowed to. Yeah, they were both allowed to go back and forth. However, when they had been radicalized, it was through that radicalization permission that was given via the British establishment that they were able to then commit the preposterous and disgusting attacks that we saw.
So there you go. Well, I'm sorry. Sorry, beg your pardon. I'm interrupting. Sorry.
No worries. I'll let you come back in. I'll just give you another example. Then you can jump back in. Then I think then we can just riff off each other. But another thing that a lot of people don't mention also about Shamima Begum as well, that they do mention the fact that she went across and she shouldn't be allowed back in. But do you know, David, what age she was when she went? Was it 15? Under 18 or over 18?
15.
Yeah, 15. So would you say that she was groomed, or would you say?
Zeeshan, well, let me shock you. Yeah. I'm a heretic within the centre right or right wing community. I believe she should be allowed back in the UK. And would you like me to explain why?
Of course.
Right. Okay. I'm a free speech fundamentalist. She maybe at 15 she was naive and she was groomed online. So moving on from that, I realised I was speaking into my PC, whatever it is, PC speaker, but because I'm actually on my phone, aren't I? Anyway, 15.
Don't worry, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. 15, she was groomed, and she went over there. And what evidence of her behaviour do we have? She walked past a bin full of heads. She used to walk around with a Kalashnikov in a burqa, telling off the girls for their dress. And what's the other thing she's known for as well? She obviously married some Islamists while she was out there. None of those are probably criminal offences. In Iraq or Syria or wherever she was. Walking around with a Kalashnikov if you're a woman is probably not illegal. But anyway, it's by the by. So what we're doing is we are excluding her for thought crimes. It's what is in her head rather than what she has done is the reason she's been persecuted by the British state.
There is also another thing, David, that
Yeah.
maybe your audience may not know. It might be worth you looking into. And this is something that was submitted by the lawyer of Shamima Begum as well. And this was something that was expounded upon by The Guardian, and Richard Kabaj mentioned this in his book, which was that Shamima Begum was actually her journey across the border to Syria was facilitated by Canadian Secret Service. Did you know about this?
I've read that as well, actually. Yes.
Yeah, and then further on from that, it then was revealed that MI6 actually knew about this as well, and they were trying to keep this on the hush hush.
Sure. Unfortunately, well, those are the kind of things that we can't prove. But I'm very happy to take that on notice and say that's a feasible interpretation that what went on. And
I can just give you two sources just for your kind of interest. I mean, the Guardian did cover it. This was 31st of August 2022, and then Al Jazeera also covered it as well, around about the same period. 31st August 2022. So, like I mentioned, Richard Kabaj also. So this is not something that is unproven or conspiratorial. This is something that is pretty much accepted and out there as well. There's no real difference of opinion about this. Again, I'm happy to send you the
please DM me it. And so what you're saying, it sounds to me MI6 are trying to cover their ass by making sure she stays in Syria.
Absolutely. Because the thing is that Mark Curtis has written extensively about this, and I think he does a good job. And he gives the example where the kind of there have been certain extremist groups that have been utilized by political powers that be just for political leverage. I'll give you an example. John Kerry, the Home Secretary, he said, and this is on YouTube, I can send you the clip and you can watch it yourself as well. He admits that we knew ISIS was growing. In fact, we allowed them to grow just so we could leverage Bashar al-Assad. And then when they had grown beyond a certain kind of obviously they'd grown beyond a certain amount, it was too late. They actually couldn't control them.
Zeeshan, let me add that one thing that reasonable moderate Muslims have persuaded me over the last 5 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, was how wrong our involvement in Iraq was. Bush and Blair lied, and it led to the slaughter. Pick your number: 100,000, 300,000 Iraqi civilians. Frankly, I have to put my hand up. That's nearly a war crime.
It was actually over 1 million.
Yeah. So it is. Iraq was 1 million, and according to the inquiries, it not only were there lies, there were war crimes that took place to such a degree that they were dropping white phosphorus, which melts the skin, and depleted uranium, which rendered half of the population with cancer. But that not being said, Obama in a CNN interview, he said ISIS was a direct outgrowth of our invasion of Iraq. And Trump doubled down on this, and he actually calls Obama the founder with an F of ISIS.
I'm aware of that. So
indeed, So it's not David. It's not that these things happen in a vacuum.
David's fine.
So Dave, it's not that these things happen in a vacuum. It's that when people mention these things, they mention it as if there is an inherent hatred amongst Muslims for X, for Y, for Z. But to be fair, what should be mentioned is the historical and the political context behind this.
Yeah,
Hillary Clinton
indeed.
herself said we utilize the Mujahideen to fight against the USSR,
Yeah, I know.
which
Yeah,
later became Al Qaeda.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, indeed. Yeah,
and Karen Armstrong herself says that before the occupation of Palestine,
yeah,
the
yeah,
Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, they were all
yeah,
living in peace. It's only when
yeah,
occupation happened, it's
sure.
only when colonization happens,
Yeah, yeah,
David, that's when sentiments
yeah.
start getting
Yeah,
changed.
Zeeshan, I know, this is it. No, call me a pathetic liberal, whatever you want to whatever you want to call me. But on this, we entirely agree. Much of our involvement in the Middle East is to our shame. The only exception, there are exceptions. I think when Kuwait was invaded by Saddam Hussein, I thought it was right that we defended that. And also the other thing is, I thought our involvement in Afghanistan was correct. I really feel so sorry for the women of Afghanistan. Believe it or not, I've actually got two Afghanistani friends. Believe it or not, I've actually got two Afghan friends. One's a lady, one's a bloke, and we tend to agree on most issues. And I really feel sorry that women in Afghanistan can't get an education, have to wear the burqa all day long, and they basically they're basically baby machines. The most shaming thing I've ever read, it was in the Washington Post, about the Taliban and the extremist Muslims that live there. I'm sure you don't condone it either. I'm sure most Muslims don't condone this
But
either.
David, the thing is that you can have those differences of opinion with regards to their lifestyle, but I don't think that warrants bombing the living daylights out of them. I think that's the distinction that needs to be made, right?
Um,
Or do
I
you
don't know.
think just because you
Maybe in that case, you know, you know, force is justified. Maybe force is justified.
But then
Um,
I think there's a bit of a problem here because Muslims get accused of doing this. Oh, because you believe in a law that's different to ours and you want to push that law upon others, therefore that's wrong. I think the same should apply over here. If because over here you are bombing them, you're bombing their generations. Why? Because you just disagree with them. You disagree with their lifestyle choice. You disagree with how they treat their women or how they view education. I don't think that is a valid justification to completely wipe them off the face of the planet. Wouldn't you say so?
well, no, they should be defeated in battle. If they want to fight, they should be defeated in battle. And I appreciate the Middle East does not culturally fit in to a
One sec,
Western
I've got to step in
democracy.
here. I must step in here, right? This is what does made it. This is not just you, David, but this is a broader problem that we're highlighting here, right? We in the West, we have the audacity to go into someone else's homeland, be it Libya, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Afghanistan, talk shit about Iran. We have the audacity to call their values out, to call their way of living out, to say it doesn't align with what we perceive as morally correct, right? We invade their lands, right? We pillage their people, we exploit their resources, the oil, we destroy their homes, we subjugate them, we oppress them, and because they don't align with our values in the West, which right now, in my opinion, our values are in the toilet, just being objective, right? But we invade their land, they take up arms against us, and we have the audacity to criticize them for it. Like, we have to remember something here, right? We in the West invaded their land. They did not invade our land. You didn't. Iran hasn't invaded New York or the London. Iraq didn't invade London. We invaded their land. Their land, not our land. Their land with their cultural beliefs, their religious beliefs, their way of life. That is theirs. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. We are entitled to our opinion. But that does not give us legitimacy to invade their land, kill their people, and oppress them, and then complain about it when they take up arms and they start killing us. Like we
Okay,
can
okay,
disagree.
Johnny.
Wait, one second, David. We can disagree with how they live their life. We can have an opinion on that. Not a problem. But when it crosses over to where you're trying to use that as justification, as Zeeshan just alluded to wipe them off the face of the earth, that's wrong. You get this,
Well, I didn't say they're wiping off the face of the earth. I just said if they want to fight, we should fight back.
yeah, but David, again, what? Who started the fight? Did they get on boats and come over here and with their armies and invade London or invade New York or California? No, we went over to their land and invaded their land.
Well,
We have to remember, David, one second. We have to remember, right, at the crux of this problem, we invaded their land, not the other way around. George Bush and Tony Blair lied to millions of people. They lied to us all, and they dragged us into war which was predicated on weapons of mass destruction, which was a blatant lie.
Okay, fine. Okay, well, it's my turn, Johnny. So, if, for example, hypothetically, in June 1940, we signed a peace treaty with Hitler, terms and conditions were really generous. That if we stayed out of Europe, we would keep our empire. Great T's and C's. And but if moving on from there, if the Nazis had gone out to completely exterminate every single Jew in Europe, should we have just stood by and and looked over the wall and said, "Not my problem"?
By the way, you're deflecting, David. I want to keep.
No, I'm not deflecting.
No, you
I'm
are.
asking a question.
You're deflecting,
okay,
David.
Okay. Are there circumstances where a country's actions are so heinous we should intervene?
Yes.
Right. I'll give an example. Nazi Germany, 1930.
No, but wait. Because you can't. You're conflating here. You're trying to defend our position on Afghanistan, Iraq, with what happened in World War II.
No, wait a second. No, Johnny, my opinion is nuanced. I condemned our involvement in Iraq in 2003. I've utterly condemned that. I actually used the word "it is to our shame," and we have committed war crimes, in my opinion, in Iraq. So, but I beg to differ, because the Taliban are an aggressive Islamist army that want to destabilize the Middle East and the region they are in. And I'm just giving an example. There are sometimes justifications where the crimes are so heinous and the threats so heinous. I think we are justified to intervene.
Yeah, but David, your original point was, one second. Your point was that you said, I don't like the way they live, the way they treat their women, the way they go about their lifestyle. That was your point of contention, and I came in then. That because you don't agree with their lifestyle, which you're entitled to your opinion, by the way. No one's saying that you're not allowed an opinion. Of course you are, but that's not justification to drop bombs on them.
My Afghanistan friend phoned me up one night. We got each other's numbers. We've met loads of times, and she was she's very emotional and said, "Do you think we'll get Taliban type policies in Britain?" Just read something online or in the paper or something. These women are treated like utter shit. I just cannot believe it. They are just sort of baby making machines. Let me give an example, the worst egregious example of how the Taliban treated women. Some Afghanistani women were wounded from shrapnel and bullet wounds, and they of course took themselves to the hospital. And because there was not a woman doctor to treat them, they were sent away. And of course, women are banned from becoming doctors in Afghanistan. I'm sorry, that's just disgusting. That's depraved.
No, but David, again,
Johnny, just 1 second, please. 1 second. So, with that same logic, David, that puts the UK and the US, and I would say Europe and America in a very risky position, frankly, because a lot of people in the East, they view women here in the West as oppressed. Because if you look at some of these statistics, 4 out of 5 young women in the UK have been sexually harassed, according to a YouGov poll. In fact, even if you look, for example, at women and their jobs with regards to strippers, hair, they're forced into this profession, and OnlyFans.
Strippers aren't forced. It's generally generally consenting.
When I say forced,
the ones I've met come from Eastern Europe. They've got on a plane, got here, and taken their kit off.
yeah, so the ones that I'm referring to, it's social pressure, yeah. So when you don't have enough food to put on the table, you feel that this is the only way out. So even if you look at, for example, there were a few studies done about women in nightclubs, and they were saying that 3 women were sent into a Brazilian nightclub with touch detecting smart dresses, and they were groped. These 3 women, they were groped 157 times. So that's 86% in Brazil and 80% UK reported sexual abuse.
Well, wait, hang on a second. Brazil, I don't know. Please send me the papers.
I will do. But
please send me the papers on that.
Of course, I will. Of course. Just to finish the point, David, and I'll happily let you come back in and give your 2 cents. So I said in 86% in Brazil, but I also gave you the 80% report here in the UK. So in other words, if now in the East, if that's the criteria, that if you believe according to your cultural norms that women elsewhere are being oppressed and they're getting emails from their Afghan friends or their British friends, that now means it's okay for you to drop something called the MOAB bomb, which is the mother of all bombs. I mean, that's a very risky criteria to hold. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that Afghanistan, you said, was legitimate, yeah, but
I don't say it's legitimate. It was
warranted,
legitimate. Yeah. I'll take that back. It was legitimate.
Yeah, so you're saying legitimate, but that came on the back of 9/11, and 9/11 was to do with people that had flown an aircraft carrier into these buildings. However, apparently, most of them were Saudi Arabian. So then the question arose, why on earth are we attacking Afghanistan when most of them are allegedly Saudi Arabian? Then on top of that, Iraq was being invaded, which everybody knew it was because of the oil, but nothing made sense, David. So when you're saying that, it's legitimate, it makes sense, you have to make it make sense. Like, how are you connecting it with 9/11 when which Afghan was in the aeroplane that went into the Twin Towers? Who?
Okay, right, indeed. No, well, let me come back. If you were an objective woman, where would you choose to live? Britain or Afghanistan?
I'll say what Donald Trump said. Donald Trump said, these women don't want our help. We need to leave them alone. End quote.
I find that difficult to believe because the Afghan women I know.
This is the leader of the free world, David. And if
the Afghan women I know, she said, and also a Pakistani follower of mine also said to me, both of us said, when you're a girl in Afghanistan and or Pakistan, when you're growing up, there is normally somebody in your family, an uncle, a cousin, a second cousin, who sexually abuses you. And also as well, when it comes to what is considered to be sexual assault, it's open to interpretation. If a man aggressively asks you to buy you a drink, obviously, or puts his hand on your shoulder or touches your elbow, that could theoretically be considered to be sexual assault. It depends on the degree of it.
So, David, let me come in there. So,
wait. So, Johnny, he's mentioning a few points. I'm just trying to tackle them one by one. I don't want to lose the flow that we have.
Okay.
So, Dave, you mentioned one example of a woman that's had a negative experience, and of course, it's not.
No, I would say it's entirely reflective of what goes on.
But that would only be true.
2 women from 2 different countries have said exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's not academically rigorous enough. We need at least peer-reviewed journals, or we need some research from Pew, from Gallup. We need some numbers, David, because we're making some assertions and we need to back it up using evidence. Merely giving anecdotal evidence is I'm sorry, it's just not enough. But just a few other points.
Zeeshan, please do ask. Ask 100 objective women, where would you prefer to live? Where would you prefer to live? In the West or in an Islamic country.
Let me just once, Zeeshan, just let me tackle this one point. I need to mention it's grinding my gears. So, David, you've got this perception of these Afghan women and how they're treated, right? And that's in your logic, that's your legitimacy for us invading Afghanistan and saving them from
No.
wait.
That's extrapolation.
No,
I'm just defending the rights of women.
You
I'm
said
defending the rights of women
no,
in
listen.
Afghanistan and
No,
Pakistan.
but David, you said, right, based off how the women are treated in Afghanistan, that gives us legitimacy to invade Afghanistan, correct?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got distracted. Sorry. Run
So
that past me again, Johnny.
you, because of your perception of Afghanistan and in your own words, how the women are treated over there, we should go in there, save them, and get rid of the Taliban, correct?
No. You're taking me out of context here. You're straw manning
I'm
me.
literally repeating the words you said.
You're straw manning me.
I'm not.
Okay,
I'm repeating the words that you said.
Okay, well, okay. So let I've said it before, but I'll say it again. My major objection to the Taliban in Afghanistan was their threat to the stability of the Middle East and their warlike aggression towards the West. And one of the reasons I thought
that was not the first thing you said. The first
okay,
thing
well, fine. Well, I'm just confirming the context at the moment. And one of the bonuses of us being in Afghanistan was that women for the first time in Afghanistan had rights, and also as well.
Wait.
Oh, but by the way, Johnny, I'm sorry. Let me finish my point here. And by the way, Johnny, you're pissing me off now. Do you believe in Bacha Bachi? Do you think Afghan men should be allowed to rape 7-year-old boys? Is that something that's what we're worth fighting against?
Wait. First of all, stop being emotional and calm down, right?
No. I'm just getting pissed off. You wound me up, Johnny. I know. I'm in full broadcast. I'm talking over your mood at the moment.
David,
do you think the rape of 7-year-old boys should be stopped by American and British soldiers in Afghanistan?
Why would you? What kind of question is that?
Well, fuck you. I'm sorry, mate. You really pissed me off now.
Dave, calm down, David.
You are trying to justify an evil Islamist.
No, I'm not.
Fascist
regime. David, calm down. Just calm down. I haven't justified anything. You're putting words in my mouth. I didn't mention no 7-year-old boys. You did that, not me.
Okay, fine. Do you think the rape of 7-year-old boys should be stopped?
Again, what kind of? Do I need to dignify?
Well, obviously it does, because you justified the oppression of women. So let's move on to the oppression of women to the rape of young boys.
All right, so Johnny, I think if you just take a time out a little bit and we just bring David back down, because
that's what I'm trying to do, Zeeshan.
Yeah, I think we were having a good conversation, and I think it's just derailing a little bit.
Okay, I'll step out.
So David, just take a breath, and then we just get back to our conversation. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not apologising for what I said and lose my temper about the abuse of little boys in Afghanistan. I'm not apologising for, and girls as well, and women.
Of course. And I'm with you at that. I know what you're talking about, and that it is unfortunately a cultural. It's a disgusting cultural practice that unfortunately takes place and does need to be dealt with. That goes without saying. But yeah, let's just come back to the discussion at hand, and we can come back to these to these points one by one. And yeah, of course, we let each other speak, let each other finish our sentences. I'm not in a rush. I don't think you're in a rush. So yeah, we got plenty of time to hash these.
Well, I'll probably give it 15 minutes, half an hour, then I'll probably have to go. I've had a particularly long day. I've got research to do for tomorrow. I've got an article to write as well.
If you've only got 15 minutes.
15, 30 minutes. So yeah,
we're gonna go to Palestine, Israel, Zeeshan, because there's not.
We will. Sure. But let me just have a one-to-one with David, and then once we're back to where we were, then we can kind of continue from there. David, there was one other thing that I wanted to share with you, that because there was once upon a time that even I was under this misapprehension that indeed maybe Islam is violent. What has Islam actually done? Is it Muslims? And there was one figure, and again, I'll send this to you as well. Definitely get this checked out. There was a comparative study done by Naveed Sheikh, and you can find it in a book called War and Peace in Islam. What he did was he looked at the period between 0 and 2008, and he looked at all of the violence that has taken place in the name of different religions, isms, and schisms. Number one, right at the top, with 178 million, was Christianity. Number two, was anti-theism with a whopping 124 million. Number 3 was not Islam. Number 4 was not Islam. Number 5 was not Islam. But number 6 was Islam with 31 million. So that is a longer range study, not just taking it from post Afghanistan, post Iraq days. This is something that has been kind of looked at from 0 to 2008 and gives us a holistic and a bigger picture. And adding on to this, there's Robert Pape. Again, he's an academic whose book or even studies I'd recommend you just to have a gander at. And he said before the war in Iraq, there were no suicide attacks there. It was only after the occupation of Iraq did the suicide attacks start taking place. And also, if you look, there's a book by William Bloom called Killing Hope, in which he documents and concludes that since World War II, America has dropped bombs in 30 countries, interfered in 30 elections, tried to overthrow 50 countries, and tried to assassinate 50 world leaders. That's why, David, a lot of people are pissed off with America. They are angry. They are doing whatever, unfortunately and sadly, is in their means to get back and lash out, which, of course, um, we don't condone or we don't say it's right, but it's done for those particular reasons. And it's
Sure.
those things that we cannot divorce from the conversation. Go ahead, Dave.
Sure. Yeah, indeed. On some of those topics, I can empathise with. I think overall, America has been a force for good for the world. But I do take your point that they do like getting involved in third world conflicts, and maybe not necessarily for the best of reasons. It was President Eisenhower in the 50s who coined the phrase the military-industrial complex. Let's take out the Middle East. I'm pretty sure there's lots of naughty things going on in Ukraine and the appropriation of funding from Britain and America for their so-called war effort. You don't have to go too far from social media to find out what some of these senior politicians have been buying. So yeah, that I can understand, but the other side of the coin, though, is that I think America genuinely has been a force for good. You look at the First World War, and particularly the Second World War, the Cold War, particularly. I think under any other under Russian communism or the Soviet Union, China, particularly China at the moment as well, and militant Islam. I'm not talking about moderate Islam. I'm talking about militant Islam at the moment, and I think they are a force for good, but but to sort of kind of empathise with your point, America has done some naughty things.
The thing, David, is that I think the last two statistics that I mentioned, I think they categorically stand opposed to that. I mean, 50 countries that whose governments they've tried to overthrow. They've tried to overthrow 50. They've tried to assassinate 50 world leaders. I mean, the facts really do speak for themselves. But I'm respectful of your time, also, David. And there was one thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on, and that was the Great Replacement Theory. Just off the bat, like, what do you believe about the Great Replacement Theory?
Okay, I agree with Keir Starmer. It is by quotes design.
Okay, just unpack that, because I don't want to straw man you. I want you to have an accurate position that I could respond to.
Right. Okay. Let me see. Can you just bear with me a second?
Yeah.
While I just go into my history, and see if I can find the exact quote. Just bear with me a second if you can.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we said it because it's actually recorded in Hansard.
Yeah, because as you're looking for that, the reason why I bring up the Great Replacement Theory is because 1 in 3 Americans believe that this is taking place. 2018 shooting in a US synagogue, the replacement theory was referenced. 2019, a shooting in a New Zealand mosque which killed 50 people. His manifesto was titled The Great Replacement. In 2022, a mass shooting took place in Buffalo. He also mentioned the replacement theory, and 11 out of his 13 victims were black, and the perpetrator was only 18 years old. So we definitely do need to get to the bottom of this and see where you are with this, because
Well, okay, fine.
yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
What do you think the ethnic makeup of Britain will be in 30 to 40 years' time?
So according to majority of the polls, according to Pew, because I looked into this when I saw what you had to say, and I know Lawrence Southern and a lot of people have kind of referenced this, but the evidence actually is that by 2050, I'd even extrapolate that further. By 2050, the population of Muslims will be 11%.
I think it might be a lot more than that.
And it's actually less than that. That's according to Pew, which is probably one of the higher echelons.
When was that poll done?
Yeah, no, this is extrapolating the current data that we have.
Research done.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So this is the latest.
Please send it. I find that very, very difficult, because there are demographers, Oxford University demographers, who have said the whites will be a minority in this country by about 2050, 2060.
Yeah, so I've looked at all of the data, and there's only two main figures that come up. And number one, it's if migration is allowed to continue, it will go up to 11%. If migration was to stop, it would be 7.4%. So
Right, okay.
this is by 2050. In fact, the Muslim population has been, if you look at the data, it's been increasing 1% by decade. So in 400 years, Muslims will be a clear minority. That's in 400 years. And I think it's safe to say that before we have AI mosques and robot imams, I think we're good. And the logic somebody kind of put in a roundabout sort of way, it's a caricaturization, but I think it's fairly accurate. Somebody said, I had 3 birds in my backyard yesterday. Tomorrow there will be 6. By the end of the year, there will be 1,000, and they will have taken over. Now, the reason why this logic is ludicrous is because you have to accept that current data trends will hold. When we see that they don't, as fertility rates amongst Muslim immigrants are actually declining, and there are many other kind of issues that do affect fertility rates and having children. But yeah, what are your thoughts about this?
Indeed. Okay, fine. Well, I've found it. This is a www.gov.uk government speeches. This is a matter of public record. It's entitled PM Speech on Migration, 28th of November, 2024. As the Organisation of National Statistics sets out, nearly 1 million people came to Britain in the year ending June 2023. That is 4 times the migration rates compared with 2019. Political content redacted. What we didn't hear, what the British people are owed, is an explanation, because a failure on this scale isn't just bad luck, it's a global trend, or taking your eye off the ball. No, this is a different order of failure. This happened by design, not accident.
So what do you understand by design? Do you believe that there is a conspiracy? Who's behind the conspiracy? Break that down for me.
Okay, at best, it's indifference, and at worst, it is a conspiracy to replace the European indigenous population of Britain. In 2000, the United Nations produced a paper called Migration Replacement. So it might not be some guy, sitting in a James Bond villain, sitting in a chair, cuddling a white cat. But There seems to be a complete lack of desire in this country to end immigration and to reverse immigration and to entertain re-immigration.
So David, there are three groups that tend to get blamed for this. Number one, the Jews. Number two, the blacks. Number three, the Muslims. Who do
Yep.
you think who is responsible for this grand conspiracy?
Filthy white liberals.
So you think white people are replacing white people?
So the people behind this are liberal whites.
That's the first time I'm hearing this. How have you reached that conclusion?
Because they're the Sir Keir Starmer is a filthy white person. Sorry, all the people who are all the people in the NGOs like Amnesty International, Care for Calais, they're all liberal white people, and I hate them with a passion. And because they're kind of from my own race, I can really hate them with a passion.
That's fine, David.
Let me come in there, Zeeshan.
But then, what about other countries in Europe, David? Because Keir Starmer is not the all-hearing, all-seeing one. So what about outside in Europe? Because a lot of people do believe that this is a Jewish conspiracy theory. In fact, it's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, and that's why I also quoted a couple of places in which synagogues have been shot up, and the manifesto has been that's been referenced is the Great Replacement.
Sure you're aware of the Kalergi plan from the 1920s?
Go ahead, enlighten us.
It's a paper written by, I think it's, excuse my pronunciation, it's something like Kalergi or something like that, whereby he proposed a hybrid race of Europeans and Africans and Asians or whatever it was. I've researched Kalergi. He's actually a Catholic. He was a Catholic nobleman. I think he came from, was it Austria? I think he was. But anyway, I have to go and fact check that. There seems to be a groupthink amongst the globalist white liberal elite that multiculturalism is good. I really don't think there is any Jewish conspiracy behind it, because Jews are very bright people. They realise that if Britain, Europe, and America becomes Islamized, they won't be getting arms, they won't be getting money, they won't be getting succor from the West. So I really do find it, really find it difficult to believe that the Jews are behind this. I think where some of it may come from was in the going back to the start of Islam and what the so-called Dark Ages and the rise of Christianity in Europe. The Jews obviously had were appallingly treated, butchered by Christians in Europe.
Do you believe the Muslims are responsible for this?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Let me just come in there, Zeeshan. David, how much time do you have left?
Give me 15 minutes, but you know me. 15 minutes.
Yeah. Can you go till 9 o'clock? Can you go till 9 o'clock?
Not 9 o'clock. Might be problematic.
You go till 8:45.
I'm absolutely knackered, mate. So
I wish you'd have told me. If you'd have told me, so I would have started the space way earlier.
No. It's not that. It's just that I've had a particularly long week. My typical days, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I spend 2 hours on Twitter at 4 o'clock in the morning. I go back to sleep, get up about 8 o'clock, do my work, and anyway, I'm whinging. So carry on.
All right, so we're gonna have to take this last 20 minutes to talk about Israel Palestine. So just for those that don't know, obviously Zeeshan's not aware of your position. Can you just explain your position on Palestine, Israel, and again how you arrived at that position? So if you can start back at sort of the 1948 sort of post World War I era, and just to explain to just to give Zeeshan a baseline to work from.
I'm a shameless Zionist, and the reason I am a shameless Zionist is that when I was 11 years of age, a week before my 12th birthday on September the 5th, 1972, I rushed downstairs, been a sports fanatic, to watch the 1972 Munich Olympics, and I was so peed off that it was cancelled because of politics. And obviously it was the the Black September group who murdered 11 Israelis in the Olympic Village. Also, Yusuf the weightlifter was castrated, his testicles stuffed in his mouth, and then he was shot dead. So I only found that out sort of in the last year or so. In 1974, ITV showed a episode 20 of World at War, was called Genocide, which was about the Holocaust and the systematic destruction of Jews in Europe. 2/3 of European Jewry were basically murdered. Excuse me. Having read into the general history of so my next point after that is you can understand why Jews want their own homeland. They suffered centuries of oppression for Christians in Europe. I think it was 1290 that the British Jews were expelled from Britain, and so between 1290 and 1660, that's 300 years, Jews were excluded from Britain, and that is from whom I'm descended by. My grandmother was Jewish, and she's descended from the Jews that were invited in by Oliver Cromwell in the 17th century. My first known ancestor is Solomon, who's 1680, who was a goldsmith. So just doing my sort of reading, I think the Jews have suffered terribly at the hands of Christians, and moving on from that, as I say, you can understand why they want their own homeland after the events of the Second World War. From the Balfour Declaration in 1917, the Peel Commission in 1933, Jewish people should be accommodated in the area, and moving on from that as well, the Jews have offered land to the Palestinians. On at least 10 separate occasions in that time, and every time the Palestinians have walked away. It seems to me that the Palestinians want a one-state solution, and for the rivers of the sea, Palestine will be free, is basically an invocation of the genocide of Jews in Israel. That's how I see it.
I'm gonna sit on my hands here, Zeeshan, and I'm gonna honestly, that killed me to listen to a lot of that, but I'm gonna let you take this.
So, David, obviously, I'm respectful of your time, so we'll
Sure.
have a decent pace as we
Yeah.
continue, and we just bounce off each other.
Sure.
Just of course, we all know what happened at October 7th.
Yeah.
1,000 Israelis were killed, and we do know ever since then, 50,000 Palestinians have been killed in cold blood. You've got statisticians, news like BBC saying about 70% are women and children. Are we both in agreement that we can condemn 50,000 Palestinians in cold blood, mostly women and children, being killed in this senseless war?
I've read that 80% of the deaths are direct competence and their immediate families.
So women and children,
well,
right?
well, the other question, Zeeshan, is if the 7th of October hadn't happened, would those 50,000 people be alive today?
The thing is, we all know that 7th of October was not the beginning. It began long before that. It started from 1948, the forced expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians post Balfour Declaration. I mean, we know. I mean, there are certain people that say it started on October 7th. I hope you're not one of them, right?
No, basically, the Palestinians have been offered peace 10 and their own land 10, 12, at least 10 times since 1933, and every time the Palestinians have walked away from it.
Okay, that's actually factually incorrect. I'll just give you a few points and then you can check these up yourself. And again, I'll
Sure.
happily share these with you as
Yeah.
well. We do know Hamas has not been around forever. So the conflict could have settled long before then, but it hadn't. In fact, in 1997, there's somebody called Khalid Marshall, who was like the top, one of the to be top Hamas leaders. He actually offered a 30-year ceasefire deal to Israel, and not only did Israel not respond to him, instead they tried to assassinate him in Jordan. Again, this is documented. In 2004, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, and I can send you his video, it's subtitled as well, it's
Yeah.
on X.
Yeah.
He's the Hamas's chief religious leader, and he called for a 10-year truce and was accepting the borders, get this, of 1967. And he also said that they love the Jews. In fact, not they don't have an issue with the Jews. They are only fighting for their basic rights. And what did he get in
Sorry,
response
I'll
to
just
that?
sorry to briefly interrupt you
Yeah.
here. Frankly, I don't believe I don't believe a word of it. But carry on.
Yeah, no problem. I'll send you all of these. And
Please,
again,
please,
I'm
please, please,
giving names.
please,
Yeah,
please,
I'm
please,
giving names so you can verify this and you can
please.
challenge me if. And so he was assassinated by Israel 2 months later.
Yeah.
2009, the US think tank Institute of Peace, which is funded by the federal government, that it reported that Hamas had, and I quote, sent repeated signals that it may be ready to begin a process of coexisting with Israel. So, whether you look at American think tanks, whether you look at Hamas to be Hamas leaders,
Yeah.
whether you look at their religious
Yeah.
leaders and the videos that are there online, whether you look at their latest charter in which they make a
Sure.
distinction between Zionists and Jews, and they are also open to the two-state solution. The
Sure.
thing is that I think there's a selective bit of information that gets put to us because Israel, let's be frank, they just want to finish the job.
Sure. After 7th of October, I can understand a robust response. I'm sorry, I haven't seen the horrific videos, but I've seen a few bits and pieces that went on October the 7th. What they, the Tanzanian agricultural student and the Thai guest worker, the killing of them was just utterly, excuse me.
David, let me ask you a quick question. I want to ask you one important
I'm
question.
sorry, Johnny, it was depraved. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but I just want to ask you a question. I'm not saying that wasn't depraved. I agree with you, but I want to ask you a question. In your opinion, do you believe Israel killed any of their own people on October 7th, or do you believe it was all resistance?
If you want an objective journalistic comment, may I?
Yeah, please do.
I'm surprised that they weren't aware what was going on. That's the
No. I asked so again. In your opinion, do you believe Israel killed any of their own people? Yes or no?
No, I don't know. I really don't.
Jesus Christ.
No, this is factually incorrect because search for something called the Hannibal Directive. Now, initially, the Hannibal Directive was, it was up for debate. However, very recently, you have Gallant, who's at that time he was the he was the Minister of Defense of Israel, and he actually said that yes, we did indeed exercise the Hannibal Directive, and the Hannibal Directive, David, is when Israel deliberately shoots its own people just so they won't be taken as hostages to be leveraged later on. So I implore you to check that when you get a
Oh,
chance.
but
Hannibal
I
Direct-
really, I mentioned the should have Israel known about it? Maybe they had a complete blind spot or something like that. But I really
What,
do.
for 7 hours? For 7 hours? It took them 7 hours to respond. 7 hours. One of the most highly surveillance places on planet Earth, and it took them 7 hours to respond. You don't think that's a red flag? You think that's suspicious?
That needs research. That needs research.
No, I'm
also-
telling that's a
Yeah.
fact. I'm telling. God strike me down as my witness, right? God strike me down. That is a fact. They took 7 hours for one of the most highly surveillance places on planet Earth. It took them 7 hours to respond.
Okay. Well,
You don't think that's suspicious?
I'm talking conceptually here this evening. I'm not talking specifics. I'm very happy to research that, but I find that difficult to believe.
Also, one more important point, David, right? One more important point. Did you see all the, and I'm saying this now with my head, because I did 10 years in army, so I'm saying this now with my military head on, right? You see all that, there was 70 vehicles. You see the vehicles that were completely incinerated.
Yeah.
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 I'm telling you now, I've done 10 years in army, I've fired javelins, I've fired Milans, I've fired RPGs, I've thrown grenades, I've done it all. And I'm telling you,
Yeah.
no RPG, no AK-47, no grenade would create that level of extensive structural damage to a car, let alone 70. That was done by, and I've seen Apache helicopters in action in Afghanistan, and I know exactly what they can do and what force. And I'm telling you, them 70 cars that were absolutely incinerated, was not done by no RPG or no AK-47 Kalashnikov rifle or on a grenade. That was done by Apache helicopters with Hellfire missiles. When they, as Zeeshan alluded to, when they invoked the Hannibal Directive at 11:59 a.m. that day, 11:59, that was confirmed by Yoav Golan
Okay.
and another guy, and Colonel Erez.
Sure.
Two people
Sure.
have confirmed it was invoked.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I frankly, I find this particularly difficult to believe. I've actually got to know Israelis reasonably well over the last year or so, and they really are a coordinated and what's the word I'm looking for? As a people, that they stand by each other. So I really find that difficult to believe. They really are a country and a people that stand
But
together.
David, the Minister of Defense, the one who's in charge of their armies, he admitted in an interview that they actually did invoke the Hannibal Directive. I mean, what's difficult to believe?
My research on this will be first class. Don't worry. So
Yeah, okay.
I believe you me. I have access to people that really will give some.
But David, you're saying Jesus Christ, you're saying your research will be first class. We're 15 months in, and you haven't stated one fact yet. So where's this state of the art research in 15 months? I know more about facts than you.
I cover hundreds of topics worldwide.
Yeah, but this is a particularly pertinent topic right now in geopolitics, right?
Okay.
Since 7th October, all we've seen, they've dropped the equivalent of 5 Hiroshimas on Gaza. That's what they've dropped. That's the equivalent tonnage that they've dropped on Gaza, right? So it's pretty an important, poignant topic right now. So for you to sit there and say, I will do, what was it, state of the art research or whatever it was, epic research, I think you said, right?
Yeah.
Where's this research been for the last 15 months? Because you're even now, you're debating, if your research was as good as you claim it to be, how come you're disputing the Hannibal Directive, which was admitted by, as Zeeshan mentioned, Yoav Gallant, who was the Minister of the Army. He stated it. I've seen the interview where he stated it. He admitted it. And Colonel Erez was on the ground that day. He admitted it too. 11:59 p.m. it was done. Now, if you've done your research that you claim to have done, how come I've got the answers and the facts, but you don't?
Well, I don't claim to have the research, but it sounds to me I need to do some more research because I find that very difficult to understand.
I think you need me on your team. How about that?
Go on. Try me.
You need me on your team to help do this research because there's a lot that I think it seems that you've missed. Would you say that there's been genocidal rhetoric from the side of Israel?
No. No, I really don't.
Okay, let me give you a few examples and you can check this. President Herzog said when this happened, and he's on tape as saying it, all, and I quote, all of Palestinians in Gaza are responsible. Prime Minister Netanyahu...
72% are. Yeah, 72% of adults are.
No, but he said all Palestinians in Gaza are responsible. All.
Okay,
All means all.
Whatever the nuances are of what people say is, the atrocities were on the 7th of October, and 1,200.
David, you're an Englishman. You're an Englishman. I mean, you should have more command over this language than myself. I mean, all, according to anybody, means all. There's no nuance of language. There's no semantics.
Exactly.
All means all. We take
Well,
things by their...
he should have said most rather than all.
He should have, but he didn't.
David, if I said to you right now, I'm going to take
But
all
Johnny,
your money.
I'm respectful of David's time as well, so I just
Alright.
wanted to go over a few others.
This is
Are
jarring.
you aware of Amalek, David?
No.
So, Prime Minister Netanyahu, when October the 7th happened, he came and he said Amalek. That's referring to the Bible. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 3, which means you kill all men, women, suckling infants, and donkeys. So when he came on the stage, he said Amalek. And B'Tselem, which is a human rights organization of Israel, said anyone who's gone through the education system in Israel knows when Amalek is mentioned, they mean wipe out everybody, everything. And that's why you had the Israeli army spokesperson, Daniel Hagari, say, our goal is destruction, not, and I repeat, not accuracy.
Sure.
And you had the former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett saying, we're fighting Nazis. Now, hearing this, David, would you not say that this is genocidal rhetoric?
Islamofascism, is a reality to me.
But do you see this is genocidal rhetoric, right?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the third thing I wanted to ask you was, would you say that war crimes have been committed
No,
since
not at all.
October the
Not at
7th?
all. I would suggest to you the Israelis have been ultra, what's the word I'm looking for? Restrained. It's sorry, Johnny. If someone had murdered my kids and my family, I could not hold back.
So, all right. So, David, one second. I want to make 2 quick points, right? Point number 1.
Johnny,
Are you
don't piss him off,
aware?
please,
Are
yeah?
you aware? 2 quick points. Are you aware that in the same year, in 2023, prior to October 7th, 234 Palestinians, 70 of them were children, were murdered in the West Bank? Are you aware of that?
I don't believe that at all. No.
I'll pull it out. This is the thing. No, David, one second. That's one point, right? The second point. Have you looked at Gaza? Like, have you actually looked at Gaza? Have you seen the landscape of Gaza?
Yeah, it's a strip.
Does that look?
It's a strip.
Does that look quote unquote targeted to you, or does that look like what you would probably envisage Hiroshima looked like after they dropped the nuclear bomb?
The simple reason is, when they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, 360,000 people were killed.
You're missing the point, David. You're missing the point. I'm talking about the level of destruction.
What would you bloody do if somebody murdered your wife and your kids?
So wait, so 1 second, right? So you think, right? Let me get this clear. You think that level of destruction and annihilation constitutes targeted strikes?
Well, I think it is because
What?
Wait, hang on a second. During the way that the IDF have approached the problems in Gaza is used by the West Point Military Academy, because the death rate is one civilian to death to one.
So again, David,
Johnny, let me finish. Sorry, Johnny, let me finish. One
you have been
one civilian
to
one combatant.
David, you have been brainwashed. You are batshit crazy.
No. I've actually done my research, Johnny. So
you clearly haven't, because you didn't even know about the Hannibal Directive a minute ago.
Okay,
So we just told you.
No, I can't know everything, and just because you don't know who scored the winning goal in the 1976 FA Cup final doesn't invalidate the rest of your views. But
you haven't stated one correct thing yet.
Well, well, fine. Well, good luck. Okay, fine. Well, I think it's probably time for me to go, gentlemen.
No, because
ladies and gentlemen.
Taken to the clear.
No, Johnny.
David, you've been took to the cleaners. We took you to the cleaners. You've been cooked.
David, I'd like to thank everybody for your time. I thank everybody for your self-indulgence. And Johnny, I'm sorry.
But David, why are you running away though?
Johnny, please put yourself on mute. Let me just have my last
I'm leaving. I'm sorry. Good night. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
good night.
David.